Hey everyone, welcome back to another D French guitar lesson. Today we're going to look at the dreaded bar chord. And this is something that stops beginning guitarists in their tracks and really just freaks them out. And I understand because it is not an easy thing to play. It's not easy to get that finger all the way across those 6 strings, get the calluses built up. But we're going to look at some tricks on how to slowly build up to it. And then all of a sudden you're going to have the full bar chord. You're going to play up and down the fretboard with no problems whatsoever. Everyone who's ever learned guitar, starting off with the beginning chords, G, D, E minor, C. Now all of a sudden, we want to go to it from a C to an F. What do? Well, we can do a half F, which is right here, which I'm going to explain in a second. Or we can play the full bar chord. And that's just a nice full chord. So it's a very common change, C to F, and there's not a lot of other options to play this without really getting that bar chord in there. Okay, so the first thing I like to teach new students is let's go gradual. Let's just get those fingers built up. Let's just start slow and slowly work our way up to the full bar chord. And this just takes time. Here you just got to get the, kind of the awkward shapes down. Once you do, you'll be able to play all the way up the fretboard with no problem whatsoever. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to look at an F. And we're going to do a simple triad. So the triad is just going to start here on the 4th string, 3rd fret, 3rd string, 2nd fret, and 2nd string, 1st fret. And then your first finger is just going to lightly touch this 1st string so it doesn't ring out. Now you got an F triad. 1, 3, 5. It's a nice chord and it works, but it's kind of limited, and you got to be very careful not to hit these open strings. So to be able to kind of aim for those 3 strings, it's a little challenging, and it kind of limits your ability to express whatever song you're playing. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to work our way up to it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 3rd finger and we're going to move it up a string here to the 5th string. We're going to replace our 3rd finger with our 4th finger. Now we've got all the middle strings being covered. It's not technically a straight up triad. We're doing what's called an inversion because we're starting here on the 5th note of the F chord, which would be a 3rd or 2nd inversion, but it still works. And if I'm playing in a situation where I have a bass player covering that low end, sometimes I'll just play the F like that. Okay, so then once we get this down, we can start moving it around the fretboard. Okay, so we've got our F going here, basically a 2nd inversion F. We're missing the low root and we're missing the high. So what we want to do next is we want to take this 1st finger and we're going to lay it across these first 2 strings. And that's going to give us our high F up here on the E string. If you ever let up on that 1st string, you have what's called an F major 7, and that does work. There are times where you can use that in a song, but not all songs it works for. So let's always try to get that 1st finger built up so we can lay it across that 1st and 2nd string, those 1st and 2nd strings. Now we got our F. Okay, once you feel comfortable with this, what we're going to do is we're going to take our 1st finger, move it all the way across that 1st fret. We're going to start here on the low 6th string. Now we got our full F bar chord. Okay, so again, let's take it in steps. We're going to start with the 1st step, which is your triad. Okay, then we're going to move our 3rd finger up a string. 4th finger's in place. Okay, we're still muting that 1st finger. Take our 1st finger and lay it across the 1st and 2nd strings. Now we got our high F ringing out. We're going to take our 1st finger, lay it straight across. Now we got our F bar chord. Okay, so now what we can do, once we get this down, first what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of muted strings. That's normal. You just got to keep pushing through it until you're going to have a lot of, there's a few reasons for that. One, if you're not pushing your first finger down hard enough. Otherwise, you might be laying your fingers across the other strings. Whatever it is, you got to take an inventory, and every now and then just stop and go down through each note and make sure each note's ringing out. Okay. And then once we get that down, we can start moving it up the fretboard. So we got our F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Then we got our full octave there. Okay, once we get this down, now we can start modifying that chord to create some extended chords or a minor chord. First thing we're going to do is go from an F to an F7. And this one's very simple. All we got to do is play our F, and then we're going to lift our fourth finger here. Now we got an F7 chord. Now the important thing with this chord is keeping that first finger laying across those strings, because that first finger's got to make that dominant 7 ring out. If you're muting that, then you're not really getting a 7th chord. So we got to make sure that we're keeping that first finger really tight against the strings. Okay, let's go back to our F. Now we're going to go from an F major to an F minor. Again, in this bar chord with the 6-string root, very simple. You're going from major, lift your second finger. Now you got our minor. And again, this makes it more important for that first finger to be laying across that first fret and covering all those strings. There's your minor third, and that's an important note to ring out. Okay, so let's review. We got our F, F7, F minor. Okay. Once you get that down, then we want to start learning the notes on the 6th string. E, F, F sharp G, G sharp A sharp B, C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, up to the octave. Once you get that down, you can take that same shape, guitar's all about patterns, and you can move it up and down the fretboard to play different chords. So the first thing we want to do is maybe go up to a G. Got our G major, G7, G minor, G. Okay, or we want to play it in C. Same thing, same shape. Want to play it in A. So it's really important. The best way to learn those root notes is just learn songs that are using these bar chords. Eventually you're just going to kind of recognize where all those are. So if somebody says play me a C, I'll go right to here. If somebody says play me an F, I'll be here or up here. Somebody wants B flat, I know it's right there. A flat, whatever it may be, because I know all the roots on that 6th string. Okay, the next one we're going to look at now is our 5th string root bar chord. And that's going to be starting here on the 5th string. We're not going to play the low 6. Okay, so we're going to do a B flat. That's what this note is here. This is a B flat. And we're just going to start with our simple 5 chord or power chord, whatever you want to call it. And so we're going to do it by placing our first finger here on the 1st fret of the 5th string, 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, or 4th string, and then our 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Okay, and when you're playing this chord, you want to try to mute these other strings. Okay, so that's a power chord or a 5 chord, they call it, because you're just basically playing the 1 and the 5 and then repeating the 1 up here an octave higher. And sometimes you don't even need this octave 1. Okay, so that's the start of that. That's our B flat power chord or B5 chord. Okay, now we want to get the 3rd in there, which is right here. Now, I don't have long enough fingers. Some players will be able to play it like that. I don't like that shape. So what I like to do is just take my 3rd finger and lay it across those 3 strings. That's the meat of the chord right here. You got your 5, 1, 3, and then back to the root. And for right now, we're going to mute that high E string and mute this low E string. So we're just playing the middle strings to get that B flat. Okay. Now right now, my first finger is not really laying across. I'm just playing the root with that first finger. And that works just fine. But I don't want to have that responsibility of keeping that first string muted or risk it being open. Now you got a really dissonant sounding chord. So what I want to do is I want to lay that first finger again across that first fret. My third finger's got to bend the opposite way, and it's just cover the 4, 3, 2 strings. And then my first string's being played by the top, or this part of my first finger. So you're playing down from the 5th string. Now you've got a B flat bar chord. Okay, so again, this one puts a lot of strain on your hand. It's really important that you always be stretching, always keep those hands nice and loose. Don't jump right into it when you start practicing. Get your fingers warmed up, and then you can start doing it. Especially if you're playing an acoustic guitar, bar chords are the worst because they will create a lot of pain. It's a lot of pressure you got to put on those thicker strings. So on an electric, it's not as bad, but still take care of your hands. Make sure you keep them nice and loose. Okay, so we're going to go back to that B flat bar chord. Chord. Now I gotta do a whole different shape. It's not like playing this bar chord from the 6th string where you just have to lift fingers off. This one I gotta do a different shape, so I'm gonna go from here, and I'm gonna take my 3rd finger and just go straight down on the 4th string, and then I'm gonna put my 4th finger here on the 2nd string, and then here's my dominant 7 right here. So we're gonna have to really kind of keep our fingers nice and straight. That's our B7 chord. And then we're gonna go to a B minor, which is gonna be the same shape as the first bar chord we learned. We're just gonna move everything down a string. So now our 3rd finger's on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. 4th finger's on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. There's our minor 3rd. 2nd finger's on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. Got a B flat minor. Okay, so again we're going from B flat, B flat 7 to a B flat minor. Okay, and then once you get those down, again you want to learn the roots here on the 5th string, so you got to just work your way up. A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. And then you can take that same shape and move it around. So now I've got going from a B flat to a C, D, E, F, G, A. Same thing with the 7 chord. Or the minor chord, B flat minor, C minor, D minor, E minor, F minor, G minor, A minor. Okay, so a lot of the time with bar chords, it's just time and practice. You got to get those fingers built up, got to get them comfortable, you got to and then you got to learn the roots here on your 5th and 6th string. So I hope you liked this lesson. If you did, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you in future videos.